be reviewing the report submitted by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information on the Center of Occupational Studies. And we had sent some additional questions to deal with the sixth form pathway program, which you should have in front of you the report from the Ministry of Education on the sixth form pathway program. Members, we have some outstanding matters. The reports, how many reports? The reports, 5 reports have been emailed and circulated and recirculated to members. We are not getting the response from the members for the approval of these reports. Let me remind members that it is our responsibility that after the deliberations of ministries, agencies, and departments, that we then do a report from the PAAC to be tabled in the House, the lower house. We have 5 such reports, so we are tardy in tabling these reports. I communicated in the email that we will be approving those reports as they have been circulated from as far back as September of last year. So I've asked the clerk to have those reports ready for when we come to Parliament next week for the standing finance, that members can sign these reports and we can have them tabled in the House as soon as the sitting resumes. So if you have not yet read them, I'm imploring members to read them. Also, members, that as we had slowed down. You want to comment on that? Sure.
No, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make the comment that going forward, maybe we could make sure that at the sitting of Parliament that the document be presented to us for us to just sign off on it so that the reports can be submitted.
Which is what we're going to do.
All right.
So what we usually do is circulate it so that members can read the reports, make any amendments that they see fit, so that we can then sign a report that is satisfactory to the members.
I agree with that, but outside of that,
yes,
the fact that the reports have to be sent off is
yes,
that we take it to,
yes.
to
So
Parliament.
we are now bringing them forward and making sure that the standing finance, which begins next week, that we'll have them available for members to sign. All right?
Chairman, if you're not getting responses via email, also for the clerk, it would be good to just have the physical document circulated at Parliament. Once persons are sitting there at Parliament, they will be compelled, almost as it were, to look at the report and make their notations at that time. I know it's more paper, but if they pass around one document and persons make their scribbles, then they can't say that every effort hasn't been made to stick them in their eye with the information.
You know, the sad part about it, Member Holness, is that we have circulated those reports even at the sitting of the PAC for members to take home and read, and no response. And the truth is, members, is that it has been a little bit frustrating for the staff itself, the consultant, our clerk here, who has taken the time to prepare not only minutes but these reports, and members do not respond to them. So whenever you sit with your members, with members of the committee, please implore them to just deal with these matters, because we, as a committee, we are tardy when we don't table these reports. And it is not as if we have not done the work. The work has been done. We have not completed our work if they are not tabled to the lower house. All right. Any apologies for absence? I have apologies from
members
3
who are
members.
Overseas, I'm not sure if you got those apologies.
Tova Hamilton, Fitzjackson, and Dwight Sibbles.
Yes.
Remember Dave Brown is unable to be here on time, or he might not be here any at all because of some unforeseen.
And I also have to leave early for a constituency matter, which I've asked Member Holness to assume the chairmanship at that time. So let us move to item 5, which is new business. Can you invite the Ministry of Education in, please?
Do we have anyone online, Chairman? I'm just thinking that once you go, I'm not seeing. Who do we have?
Well, this is it is a problem because we need 3 for quorum.
Yes.
I spoke to a few members yesterday who said they would have joined online.
The link, you have the link?
It was sent out by email day before yesterday, on Monday. If needs be, you can just send it to the other members and ask them to.
If a person knows that they're not going to be here, Mr. Chairman, this is the problem. This is the problem that I'm having, Mr. Chairman. If a member knows that they're going to not be able to be physically in the chamber and they're going to join online, then it is their responsibility to make sure that every effort is made to do the necessary. Mr. Chairman, I come in, I think I'm one of those persons.
You left from Montego Bay to be here.
You understand me?
Yes. And members, it has been frustrating because many of times when we send out requests for comments from members of the committee, we try to set a date for the committee, a time for the committee to meet. We have been getting less and less interest from members of the committee. And believe me, it has been frustrating because when we are judged at the end of the calendar year, as Member Holness would agree with me, and it is said that we have no meetings, it's not because we don't attempt to have these meetings. As chairman, I can't unilaterally set a meeting. I need the majority of the committee members to agree. And when we set these meetings, it is as if we are begging members to even participate in these meetings. And it is not doing well for the Parliamentary Oversight Committee, the second most important one in the Parliament, and we can't even get members to even attend these meetings. It is really unbecoming of us as parliamentarians. Believe me. Go ahead, member.
Mr. Chairman, I am one of those persons who firmly believes that this hybrid committee meetings aren't working out, and so we must go back to the original situation, and it must come as a directive from Parliament.
I totally agree.
All of us have a vested duty to the country, and so we must prepare ourselves for it.
I totally agree. Face-to-face is the way to go. The hybrid persons generally don't log on when it is a hybrid meeting, and we are threatened now of not having a quorum when that time comes. Good morning, Mrs. Dwyer and the team from the Ministry of Education. Let me start off by thanking you for your patience as you have visited the sitting of the PAC quite a few times, and we have not yet then reached to the Ministry of Education. Heart Trust took up quite a bit of our time. So this is your session alone. So you have a free rein on the deliberations. This is your first time leading the team at the PAAC, so welcome, Mrs. Dwyer, Acting Permanent Secretary. Yeah. Right. So let me give you an opportunity to make some opening remarks, and then we can go into the report that have been sent to us by the ministry, and you had sent us some additional information on questions that were sent by the committee on the sixth form pathway program. So hopefully we'll have enough time to deal with both matters, which is the Center of Occupational Studies and the sixth form. So welcome again.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning to you and good morning to members of the committee. Let me first introduce you to the members of my team. Beside me, I have Dr. Kassan Troop, who is our Chief Education Officer Acting, Dr. Felicia Marshall, Assistant Chief Education Officer, Dr. Tamika Benjamin, who is our Tertiary Support Officer and National Mathematics Coordinator, Miss Melanie Riney, who is our Senior Education Officer, Mrs. Vivian Johnson, Senior Director, Planning and Development, Mrs. Sonia Banton, our Principal Finance Officer, Miss Jeanette Brim, Deputy Chief Education Officer, Acting. So,
do you have any opening remarks on the report or anything that you'd like to, additional information you'd like to bring to the committee's attention?
Not at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Can you then just give us a background, even though you have sent a report, just on the Center of Occupational Studies and where it is at now in the makeup of the Ministry of Education. And then we can go, you have sent us a budget and some additional information on the participating institutions, and then we'll ask some questions from there.
Okay, Chair. So, and members of the committee, the Center of Occupational Studies was intended to provide an opportunity to our many students who leave the secondary school system every year uncertified and underqualified to either enter the workforce or to make a good living in the society. So currently, and even as far back as maybe a decade, we've had about 60% of our students who are underperforming at that level. 30% of them would go off to do traditional sixth form and enter the world of work, whereas others would wander around finding programs here and there. And so it really was the ministry's attempt to give students, in particular those who study TVET, an opportunity to continue on their education and to obtain an associate degree, and would be able to either enter the world of work or to go on to continue further studies, you know, in a university, get a doctorate, get a master's, or whatever. So that was what it was intended to do. And I must say, by additional information, this is something that was outlined in the Vision 2030 strategy, that we should, and I quote, ensure that secondary school system equips school leavers to access further education and training or decent work provide multiple pathways to equip each school leaver with a transition to higher education and/or the world of work. So the Center of Occupational Studies was just one strategy to ensure that more of our students would be accessing tertiary and going on to do decent work, as it were.
Go ahead, Member.
I noticed that the per capita cost for a student is somewhere in the region of $150,000. Do students make any contribution towards their studies, or is it totally at the expense of the government? That's question number one. I'm going to allow you to answer because I have a deeper problem with how young people appreciate being educated. So my next question is going to be like a question and statement. So answer that one first, Mr. Dwyer. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Dr. Troop, but education is highly subsidized at the moment, but there is a contribution that is, students are called upon and their parents are called upon to make. But I'll ask Dr. Troop to just...
All right, thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Member. So we, as Pierre said, the program is heavily subsidized by the government. And as you know, the program of education is something that we implement in a partnership with home school community. So when we look at the spend now on education at the early childhood level, pre-primary, the contribution from home parents, for every $1 that we spend in education from the government perspective, parents spend $1.50. And likewise at the primary and secondary level, for every $1 we spend, parents spend 70 cents. So in the same breath, there is a contribution from the parents at the tertiary level as well. The $150,000 we provided then for this program covered full tuition and program support, but our students would find their transportation and meals and so forth supported by their families.
So Dr. Troop, that leads me exactly to my next point. I remember going to high school with parents who kept telling me, I have nothing to give you. No land, no house, no car. All I have to give you is an education. And I can think back from the days of high school, many, I won't put a percentage, of the young people had zero appreciation for education. When I saw them by the time I had left university, that is when they started to have an appreciation for the fact that education was of value. But by then it was absolutely too late. Is there any plans, is there any arrangement where the ministry can find a mechanism to use psychologists and other means of helping young people to mature in their understanding of the value that education will bring to them and their life and ultimately the Jamaican society? Because we're spending a lot, and after somebody has wasted their time almost through high school, or we have not, because of how we administer our education system, helped them to appreciate that they were really better chefs and that they really should have been a hairdresser, they should have been a cosmetologist. They have gone through high school, paid no attention, and then finally, after high school, they're saying, okay, you know what? Let me now enter another program. All of it costing a lot, and I'm not sure how much the society benefits from it all.
You're absolutely correct, Member. We do have to do more. I must say that steps are being taken to improve our career counseling in our high schools. Our minister recently directed us to do an audit of the system to see how many counselors we have per student when we look at the per student ratio that we provide. And decisions were taken to increase the allocation in our high schools to make sure that there's sufficient career counseling. The integration of the COS and CAP program into the formal structure was also an opportunity to extend the learning opportunities that will give the students time to mature, because the research that we did showed that more time in education will give students an opportunity to develop and to improve in their proficiency, which is why the thrust was taken to extend the school year from 5 to 7 years, especially when we look at the boys. With the gender approach to education, which is a major strategy, boys develop a little slower, and up to age 18, they are given the opportunity to catch up. So the research also pushed us in that direction, that we should keep them longer, give them an opportunity to mature and maximize on the opportunity. And so hopefully with that additional time and coaching, they will take education seriously. And to see how that transfers into social and economic transformation of their lives and their families, because it's education that will make that difference. So we will have to do some more in that, but we have to get our students to embrace the value of education.
Is there any information that helps you to appreciate how many of the students having completed occupational studies have been employed, gainfully employed, are benefiting from having had this exposure?
Okay.
Do we track them any at all?
Well, the plan was for us to do a tracer study, but we didn't get to execute that with the transition and with the pandemic and so forth. We didn't get to complete that, but this is part of the sixth form framework that we're supposed to map the students and track them. Even those who are intending to go overseas, there is a formula as well to track those students. So we know where our students are, and we know how many students will move into the pathways from as early as April of the final year of grade 11 program, and we should know what programs they will be pursuing, and we will be tracking the retention and completion rate of our students, and those will move on to higher education, because the program will give them an opportunity to only desire and will only need an additional 2 years to complete a bachelor, which is a wonderful opportunity. So we have built into this framework a tracking mechanism for our students.
Can the ministry tell me how much is it that we spend annually on remedial education?
Well, at this point in time, Chairman, we don't have a remedial program per se.
No, but
what we have interventions.
No, when I say remedial, and maybe probably it's the same thing we're saying. Mm-hmm. When you have a program like what the Centers of Occupational Studies is, because as you have said in your brief, is that these students leave school without any certification. Mm-hmm. So you have the CAP program, which was also a remedial.
Right.
You have the Centers of Occupational, which is also dealing with, I term it remedial. Mm-hmm. You might term it intervention.
Okay.
What it is, and these are, well, no.
Not quite remedial, Chairman. It's a skills-based training,
no,
technical.
But no, hear me out. Hear me out, member. If a student goes through high school up to grade 11 and they're leaving without any certification or any subjects, and we try to capture them in a program after school, hence why you're doing the sixth form program too. Mm. And I have my own issues with that. Right? How many? So, hence you have the heart, which also where you lower the qualifications to enter the heart itself. For students, no need of any subjects anymore. We have different programs that try to capture these students that leave the secondary system without any skill set, any subjects at all, because all of us would have done CSEC or CXC at some time after you reach grade 11. Mm-hmm. Many pass none. In your own report here on the sixth form program, you said on an average only 35% of grade 11 cohort leave the education system with a certification. So that's why I said remedial. You're capturing the students. How much do we spend on an annual basis as a government, as a country, on those students that leave the education system without in trying to capture them in some program or another?
Okay. Chairman, prior to 2019, we had the CAP and CAUSE initiative. and the highest budgetary allocation we had at that time was $950 million. Since then, the directive was given pursuant to the evaluation of the program to integrate the program so we can maximize on that resource. So at this point in time, we are not focusing on post-high school intervention, we are doing preventative. So the model of education has changed. One, we are doing the alternative pathways to secondary education. So the students' data from PEP follow them into high school, and there is a treatment plan developed to assist those students to improve in their weak areas and to transition across pathways. As part of that intervention, we give to those high schools with students on pathways 2 and 3, student support pathway coaches. So that's where we have put the investment. So coaching is now a part of the secondary education system, where help is given for co-planning, for independent learning, for directed individual learning plans, which is not a norm in our system. So this is a new approach that we have taken to assist those students who need help. So the PEP information is coming up to say these students are not necessarily ready for grade 7, but here's an approach to treat with them. That's what we have done. We have the mathematics program, the National Mathematics Program and the National Literacy Program. Those are 2 interventions again. What we do, we look at the PEP data, we look at the CSEC data for the underperforming schools, and then we place the math coaches and the literacy specialists out into the field to work with these students and their parents and teachers. So that involves pulling the students from their classes and having the specialists teaching them at the high school. It involves us doing common planning with the teachers. So we go in and we sit with all the math teachers and the literacy teachers, for example, and we plan guided by the National Standards Curriculum. So this is how we have been working it now, Chairman. We're taking the preventative approach, working through the high school system rather than focusing on them after high school, because that has not proven valuable and high returns on our investment.
So I'm still trying to get an idea of how much it is, because if in the budget summary that you have sent us, or we have gotten, we are spending up to $300 million on an annual basis on the Center of Occupational Studies.
Well, that was prior to, sir, Chairman.
No. And I'm happy we are moving in the right direction. Okay. No, don't get me wrong. Right? And the reason why I'm asking, because as a rural member of Parliament, we see the struggles of these students. When I have a cohort of students coming into grade 7, where half of the class is not reading at grade 3, grade 4, then they're going to struggle right through that 5 years of education if there is not true intervention. Yeah? And even at the Mile Gully High School, we tried to do a little summer program before that cohort starts in September, because we know that they're going to struggle.
Yes.
Right? So we do a little summer program with them. But, you know, I've always said, let us get it right the first time so that we don't have to be spending these resources on the back end to try and catch up.
Yes.
Right? And when you're spending $300 million on a program annually, if we had gotten it right the first time, we could divert this money in building 1 or 2 more schools.
Yes.
Or expansion of schools. So even though we're getting it right, and it's better late than never, but how is it, even as a committee, that we can help the ministry as parliamentarians to improve on that? Because yes, you place the teachers in these schools, the literacy teachers, as we do now in Mile Gully High School for the current stock of grade 7. But then the resources for the books is another issue.
Yes.
Yeah? When the books that they have been sending, sometimes these teachers have to take the initiative to see what these students enjoy, what it is that they find common interest in. You know, so I visited that classroom recently, and it's all boys. 20 boys, and they're enjoying, they want to sports.
Yes.
So we had to now get books that have sports, for them to read about football, because that is what spurred their interest. But we had to make that money now to get those extra books. Yeah, so it is not a one-size-fits-all, and where the ministry is concerned, it is how it is that you adjust to each situation to make it much better.
Yes.
Because my personal feeling is that the sixth form, this additional 2 years, those you may have out of a class of grade 7 of 40 or 60 students, but by the time they get to grade 11, they're still not at that reading or arithmetic at grade 11. If they're not passing the CSEC, even 3 CSECs at grade 11, to then give them that skill set. And I strongly believe that a lot of the aggression we're seeing in the society is because we're just not at that level of reasoning, because they're not able to read. So even though we
I'd like to say something.
I'm about to let you in because I've seen your hand, madam. It's how it is that we fix it and not keep on trying to build on top of each problem that has not succeeded. Because as you said, we started the CAP program in schools. Then if we were getting the results from the CAP program, then why are we then moving to another level if the CAP program had succeeded? And in my estimation, it did not work how we wanted it to. Right. Hence why we're going to another pathway. And I find that in government, when something don't work, instead of trying to fix it, we build another thing on top of it. Discard this one, and then move on without fixing the root cause of the problem. Yeah? So if the problem is, we are, in my own constituency, we are trying to do a literacy program in the feeder schools. So that once we have those students coming to the high school, at least they're at a certain level. But if we don't fit at the feeder school, catching them at grade 7, when a youth now is looking at different interests, because in my literacy class at Malbel, it's only half the students that are really turning out to school, to the literacy program. You're better to mold them in the primary school than when they get to high school. I don't believe now that there are big men and big women. And, you know, to come to a literacy class, boys, is a look down upon the youth. Yeah? So if we could capture them, which I know you have a literacy program in the primary schools.
Yes, we do.
But are we getting the desired result? We are getting some results. I'm not knocking it. But are we getting the desired results is really the issue. Before you
we can get more, Chairman. Yeah. We are seeing some improvements, especially in the area of literacy. We are still struggling, I must admit, with the numeracy area, and we have seen that in the Orlando Patterson's report.
Give country schools some more attention. Beg you. All right?
Okay.
Member Morrison, you wanted to comment.
Thank you. Dr. Troop, I'm very impressed with the thought that is going into this pathway program, and I do wish this program every success. My own opinion is that the government should spare no coin in getting this program off, running, and robust. This program promises to be a game changer, and I will add, Chairman, that in the long run, it will cost the government way more to have thousands of children leaving high school without a hope, without a subject, without a skill, sitting at home months, years, having no clue. In fact, I believe that what has happened before from previous years in our system of education was grossly unfair to our children. And Dr. Troop, I'm very happy with the level of assessment, the level of thought, the fact that this will even take on a psychological component. And that, of course, is going to cost, because now we will need to have the whole suite of arrangements to treat with children, children with special learning needs, children from various backgrounds with different realities that we absolutely must address. When we have the beautiful tagline, every child can learn and every child must learn. What was happening? We are year one, first form, second form, third form, fourth form, fifth form. No real assessment in many of our institutions, right? As to tracking the progress of our children. How are they doing? And what can be done to ensure that this child leaves high school functional and fully ready to become a part of society? This pathway program, if handled properly, right, and if given the full support, the full resources, right, that it is going to demand, we are going to see a new day in education in Jamaica. And Dr. Troop, I also want to urge all stakeholders to consider this component, discrimination, because that is what has held many of our children back. This thing where if you're not a doctor or a teacher or a lawyer or an engineer, you have not done well, you are worthless, you don't have much to give. We need to also rework the thinking of our society that greatness is in every child born in this country, every child who accesses the system of education, greatness is in that child. And our system is going to unearth that potential in that child. So that child who wants to be a hairdresser, from the first day in high school, that child can proudly declare it. And we have a system that is going to nurture that child in the right direction, where such a child can end up getting a degree, right, in aesthetics, for example. We need to also put in that system in place where we educate our population. My child has inner potential. My child is brilliant, and brilliance is not necessarily based on a prescription that society gives it. And of course, I look forward to giving this program full support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Morrison. I do stand with your contribution. We really have an opportunity here. And as Chairman said, we need to just get it right. We started out with a parallel program. It was evaluated. There was some strength to it. We have brought the strength to bear in this arrangement that we have now implemented. We just need to commit, and I can give the commitment that the team of the Ministry of Education will see this through, given the value that it has for the social and economic transformation of our young people.
All right, I want to just touch on the report that you gave us, enrollment certification summary, because I want you to just explain to me, because it's in the report that you gave us. You see one of them there? No. Yeah. Give Mrs. Swan this one. Give Mrs. Swan this one. Yeah. If you can explain, because when I look at the report you gave us to the budget, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, we would have spent about $1.146 billion on the program. But you are showing me out of an initial student enrollment of 2,859, completion of being certified is only 799. Well, you said 799 completed, 336 certified. I'm not sure what current means, if you can explain what current is. And what is the stackable credentials? Because you are having a certified percentage of only 19%. And we have spent over 1.146 billion on that program in those 3 financial years.
Chairman, allow me to ask Ms. Rainey, our Senior Education Officer.
Certainly.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Can you press the mic, please? Can you turn on your mic? Yes.
Okay, from the figures here, the 799 completed, those are persons who have been enrolled and would have finalized their training throughout the period. Certified would have been those that would have been competent and received certification.
So completed mean that they are not yet certified?
Completed, yes. So they are on the path but not yet certified. So there is either one thing left for them to be certified. Maybe they are missing an exam or they are missing some part of the module to complete to be certified.
Mm-hmm.
The stackable credentials, my understanding is that all the students that were enrolled in the Center of Occupational Studies, along their degree path to acquire an associate degree, they were introduced to industry certifications. So they were introduced to self-serve certification, they were introduced to customer service, they were introduced to a few like that. Mm-hmm. Most of them were also international certifications. So it makes them more marketable and so on. So for the persons who are who have been completed here, they would have also received those certifications and can seek jobs.
Did the whole issue of the NCT vet not being able to issue certification, would that affect this 799?
This Center of Occupational Study, the certification or qualification would not be NCT vet. NCT vet would have allowed the students to gain entrance into this training. So the certification that they will be receiving would have been from the school that they are, the colleges, like community colleges.
Yeah, but and preparing for this, I like to do my own investigation outside. And what I picked up in my own research is that the public colleges, meaning the community colleges, which falls under the Ministry of Education's guidelines and rules and regulation, compared to the private ones. One, the entrance qualifications per student differed from the private to the public institution of the community colleges. Two, the community college said that they could not certify because of the situation with NCT vet, but yet still the private ones were able to give certification pending that certificate, that some of the courses that were done. All right? And when I look at the budget itself, undertaking where the other institutions could not.
Was that for cause or cap?
Cap.
For cap?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we are speaking on
the
cause.
center, yeah. But,
right.
But they're all giving, well, I am going by even the report that you gave us here, which gives us a list of the centers, and the centers like Barrett and Barrett University, compared to the Western Hospitality, Montego Bay Community Colleges, and institutions like that.
Remember, what I want to explain was that for the Center of Occupational Studies, for the students to enroll in the occupational associate degree in a private or public, they would have to have at least a level 2 NCT vet. At the completion stage, then they would acquire maybe an associate degree in construction management.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Right. Mm-hmm. For the CAP, then that's where the NCT
before you move on
in.
to the CAP, so you're saying to me, if they wanted to go to, say for instance, all right, let's use Western Hospitality, which is in the western side of the island, and Montego Bay Community College. You're saying to me then that the same requirement to enter Montego Bay Community College is the same for a Western hospitality?
Yes.
Just the two? Are you sure?
Yes, sir. Because at the end of the qualifications to the qualification body, when the certification, just like you are doing an associate degree at Montego Bay Community College in hospitality management, it requires you to have maybe 5 C-Sec subjects and so on. They may take you without the maths, but then you have to do an asset test to make up your time for the 2 years.
Repeat that again.
So they may take you without the math or the English, but then you would have to, within your tenure
You
there.
need C-Sec subjects.
Yes, you would have to do those asset tests.
Good. And is it the same requirement to go to Western hospitality?
Would it be the same requirement?
No, you're assuming that it is
No,
needed.
I'm clarifying the associate degree. A general associate degree. Right. So in a general associate degree, you have to have 5 C-Sec subjects, including math and English. So in most cases, because of UCCJ qualification, when you are getting the certification at the end of 2 years, you ought to have all the requirements to make the certification qualified and valid. So some colleges may take you without the math or English, but within your tenure there in your training, you ought to do that, what you call it, the college level math or English.
I would
Chairman,
say
Chairman, she's saying that the requirement is the same. However, there are colleges which deviate from demanding that all your requisite qualification is present at start. And it goes right back to the chairman's question that what we allow for one should be what is allowed for all.
And the reason why I ask is that when I looked through the report, and it jumped out at me because you have the Western hospitality in the western side of the country, and you have the Montego Bay Community Colleges. And each time that I look on a report, when I look at the students entering the community college, it is way less than that of the Western hospitality. And then when I look at the subject matters that are being offered, both are offering the same. So when I ask the question because I made the calls to the colleges, the community colleges, and their challenge is that their requirement, which comes under the community college council, they have to abide by the entrance of these students by what is required of them from the community college council. But then the private institutions can vary. Hence now, when you look at it, instead of us sending more students to the community colleges, we send them more to, or a larger cohort goes to the private institutions. You understand what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, the entrance requirements are not the same.
Chairman, it actually begs another question I wanted to ask. If we have done an assessment of why people drop out, because if we are requiring higher qualification to go to the community college, does that also impact the level of retention? I would love to find out if that is at all one of the contributing factors to the level of retention being 61% of those who entered the course.
And also because the number of certified, whichever figures you want to add to it, compared to what was spent in those 3 financial years of 1.1 billion, something then is not adding up. Is it that because you're showing that we have a dropout rate out of the 2,859 of 1,134 students? What is it then? Why are these students dropping out, and why so little certification for so much money being spent? Hence why I asked the question, Dr. Troop, in how much is it that we are spending on, my term, remedial programs annually and not getting the desired results from it? Yeah? we're going to have a little change. You want to
Chairman,
answer, and then we're going to change chairmanship. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, before Dr. Troop comes in, I just want to say, Chairman, right across the system, you may have a bit of differentiation as it relates to entry requirements. Sometimes the colleges will waive something, but it doesn't mean that when you get to the end of the journey of the course of study that you would not have attained that along the way. They have ways of making up for what, any deficits of entry. And I guess when you see stackable at the end of the column, what it means is that you get a little piece here, you get a little piece there, and most modern education systems are moving toward a place where you can add whatever you gain anywhere and make it into something, because we really want to certify more of our people. So that's
the only issue that I would have with the statement, Mrs. Dwyer, is that are we actually supervising these private entities to ensure at the end of the day what they say they're doing? Because remember now, you are paying them to train these students.
Yes.
At the end of the day, they're issuing a certification which may not have anything to do with the NCT vet or anything like that. Are they actually able to be supervised that when they say that they're getting? Because when I look and see what, as you have given to us, April 2020 to 2021, Western Hospitality is $11.250 million for students that have been sent there, 75. But then you have at Northern Caribbean University at only 25 students, or even at the Montego Bay, 25 students. Right. So you're spending more with the private institutions than with our community colleges because of that same entrance that is not the same right across the board. Yes. And we are subsidizing. When I say we're meaning the taxpayers of the country. Yes. Is subsidizing, and in your words, heavily subsidized. Yeah? So, be it that they are carrying more students through the system, that don't mean just like we have in our own high school, start at grade 7 and we're still not achieving what we want at grade 11. Mm-hmm. Are we still doing the same in programs like this?
Right. Yeah? Chairman, just to add a bit to that, the lack of interest that you see sometimes has to do with the curricular offerings and what students really want to do, what's trending at the moment. So, for example, when you see like trekking towards Western hospitality, it has a lot to do with the food and beverage industry.
But Montego Bay Community College, by your own report, is offering the same. Study areas,
right.
Hospitality. Mm-hmm. And that's why I raised the question, because in my own research, it was the entrance that made it harder, while the Western Hospitality was more lenient in the entrance. But even though you sitting here said that during the course of the period that they were doing that course, that they are to catch up on those subject matters that they are not, are you guaranteeing to me that they are actually or not?
In the end, we were dissatisfied. It's why we have shifted the programs to mainstreaming.
Well,
we were dissatisfied.
This budget here, what comes of it?
Right. We were dissatisfied, but it's a good point you raised, Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just to add, Chairman, we actually did work with the community colleges to create their own math and English level college program that will be equivalent to the CSEC math and English. So they can now enter into the colleges without math and English, but must complete those college level courses that are equivalent to those exams to complete their program.
And truth be told, I feel that we are failing our community colleges. No, I'm a product of Exed Community College. So, yeah, but I think that more focus on a lot of these after-school programs should really be centered in the community colleges. I think we're underutilizing our community colleges.
Thank you, Chair.
Member Dave Brown, you have your hands raised. I have a question first from Member Heroy Clark and then Dave Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just through you to Madam Maureen Dye and Dr. Troop. It is my belief that then the last thing the chairman said is to run more programs through the community colleges. But then again, the community colleges, they too have their after-school program just the same, and the space available is something that I do know is a challenge to many of the programs that are being run. One of the things that I would want us to look at and to pay attention to is at what point do we try to capture the child? A lot of us try the situation, or we have a program that we try now at the primary stage, which I was saying to my colleague, it is too late. You have to start at the early childhood situation because, and I use the analogy, no two racing car race at the same speed, but you can bring a 13-second car, you can modify the engine and bring it to run in a 10-second race. Understand where we're going. So you have to modify that child. You have to assess the child from early childhood because no two child learn at the same pace. No two child. And therefore, we have to make sure that we pay attention to the child at that early stage. And so we will know to separate the one that learns faster than the one that has a moderate way of learning. Both of them will become doctors in the end, but not at the same time. It is a bit disappointing and embarrassing to hear adults saying to a child, you're done. It's not that the child is done, it's just that you want the child to learn at the pace that the next child is learning at. And it will not happen. And so that child becomes menace to the society at a very early age. And it's very hard to get him out of that mindset when you have cultivated in his mind by making him into a negative thing. And I've been preaching it ever since I entered politics. We must start at the earliest possible time, which is early childhood. And so we have to pay more attention. Days gone by when Miss Audrey used to have our little basic school in one little outhouse at the back. No, we as a government need to spend time and to say, this is where our education is. This is where we're going to assess a child. Again, we want to look nice and dandy, so we say all schools, all secondary schools are high school these days. No, all secondary schools should not be high school. We must go back to the technical high schools that teaches technical subjects because not all of us are going to be doctors and lawyers. We are going to be musicians. We are going to be tradesmen. But we must be tradesmen with a certification, a master's degree in carpentry and masonry. And so if we don't spend that time from then we have the problem when they leave high school to know to say that, okay, we want to enroll them in hard. But how do you enroll youngsters in hard when they are unable to say what 2 + 2 means? And so if we don't spend the time, we are going to find that we are going to be spending that heavy load of monies every year in, year out. What we get? The result that we have now. Again, remember, the private institution, Madam Chairman, really, truly, if you find them feeling passionate about transforming the youngster, then that is a plus. But I know, and I believe that their aim is really the profit line. How much can I get out of this program without have to give back too much? And so, yes, they don't care if the child comes to school, because they have already made their budget, they have already made their report that the government has to pay for the child because the child was registered at the beginning of the program. Who asked them, who made sure that the child goes to school? Are we paying them according to how the child comes to school? Are we making an assessment as to how we are going to pay them because of the result that we get from them? No, we're not doing that. We are paying them because they have a number. It's like, Madam Chairman, it's like the Ministry of Local Government is paying one utility provider per light. But who says that all the lights that I'm paying for are working? It's the same thing with the student in the institutions. And until the Ministry of Education start to spend time on making sure that all, and I hate to say it, Madam, I hate to say it, but I know if it was a private institution that was paying for the tuition of those children, checks and balance would have been done to make sure that I am getting value for my money. And that is how I see it from where I come from.
I'm going to allow Dr. Troop to respond to that, but I want you to understand that we do pay attention to all levels of the system. We can't allow one end to go run amok and leave another. It's not a zero-sum game. So we are spending a lot of money in the early childhood sector now, the Early Childhood Commission. I'm going to ask Dr. Troop to explain to you how we're managing in that sector. And the system is fully articulated. So we work there, but we have to work at our primary level because there's a lot of work to catch up on throughout the system. So Dr. Troop.
Dr. Troop, before you respond, because I suspected as much, that we must have a national approach of how we are capturing all the elements of our education system from early childhood all the way to persons at 18 going 20 coming out of the system. So I know the OS program is to catch a portion, CAP program catches a portion, high school, primary school going all the way back. And I'm sure the system is one of refining from early childhood, coming up while capturing at the back end those who would have been coming out of the system, not where we want them to be. What I would like you to add is whether or not we can do an assessment of our children at the early childhood stage, primarily at primary school stage, then at high school stage, where, and you would know psychologically and otherwise, 4 weeks, 5 weeks out of the summer, we have these children in a place trying to understand, have we placed them the right place? Are they learning the way they should learn? So everybody who is falling behind come in for 4 to 5 weeks in the summer. And all of those would be the people now who are most in need of the support and the additional assessment, the additional programs that would take them to being at the level that they should be at. Yes, member?
And so, to add to what you're saying, because we are on the same page, that the schools will say to government that these are the students that are lagging behind for whatever reason. And so, the same 4 weeks that we want to assess them, we will make it mandatory that these students must go to summer school for them to move into the next grade come September morning. And the government must hold the parents responsible for that summer program.
Well, that is part of the challenge that we have. I was saying to Member Clark before I came up is that sometimes being very democratic causes our society to fall back in certain spaces. And one of the places that we need to be a little more rigid and mandatory is with our children, so that when they are not at a place that they understand the value of education, and their parents have long gone through the system, and some of our parents really have no care for the education that their children need, the government needs to be the institution that steps in and until a child gets to 18 years old, literally rigidly mandate that you will receive good quality education that will determine if your technical skills is what is strong, if your creative side is what needs to be pushed, and get you to a place where you are of significant contribution for yourself, your family, your community, and the wider Jamaica.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I think the contributions are in line with where we are as a ministry. Part of our failure is that we don't share enough, we don't communicate enough. And so the things that we are doing, persons are not aware, and so it is thought that it's not happening. And as PS said earlier, the system is seamlessly articulated. Persons are expected to move seamlessly through the system under our alternative pathways policy. So there's a national policy. And a significant part of that is focused on through our K-13 strategy. So what that means is that the ministry has done some research. We have looked at our model, and as you have indicated, we had to direct some more attention to the preparation of our students coming in. The assessment of our students indicated that the stimulation that they required to come into the primary level was not sufficient, and so we, as a ministry, had to do something about that. So in 2016, we actually started the implementation of the 0 to 3 strategy, which is part of the K to 13 strategy, and what that means. And that came out of our study tour in Singapore, where we looked at how they supported their early childhood institutions. And what that meant is that we started to pilot what we call our Brain Builders program, our Brain Builders centers, focusing on babies from as early as 3 months, as the time when they move from the maternity period and parents go back into the work, as early as 3 months old, into a fully funded early childhood program, or what we will call a daycare. So our government now operates 116 of those, providing early childhood stimulation to approximately 4,000 infants, trying to ensure that they get the proper stimulation coming up. That we have invested for this year $709 million in that program, which is basically new. We have been expanding that over the years as part of fixing the early childhood institutions and making sure that the investment is made at the early stage. We have also been working with the basic schools through our Early Childhood Commission. We have roughly 2,400 of the institutions altogether, and we provide a grant to those institutions under what we call a public-private partnership of approximately $1.1 billion to support the subsidy to ensure that the teachers are compensated, to ensure that there are training programs to improve their capacity. We also invested in that early child level by providing trained teachers, because that's what's part of the problem. The teachers at the basic schools were not necessarily trained because persons were just setting up a little business. The early childhood institution went aggressively to address that, to look at making sure that there's proper trained persons in those institutions. What we did as a ministry is to provide funding for those institutions to benefit from teachers. Currently, we are providing 265 trained teachers at approximately, I think, $174 million annually to provide salaries for those basic school teachers. And those are still paid services, but we still make sure that the trained teachers are there. What we have instituted since also is what we call the age 4 assessment. So when the children are at age 4, we assess them. It's a psycho-educational assessment to look at their readiness, to look at the literacy and numeracy areas. We look at their psychosocial development. We look at milestones for them. What should they be doing at that time? And then that information is used to do some intervention with the children and with their parents. And there's about a 3-tier level of intervention that is done. And then the children are reintegrated back in their environment. When that is completed and the intervention is completed, when they shift to the infant schools or the basic school, when they shift to the primary schools rather, we do what we call the grade 1 individual learning profile. So we look to see how ready the child is for primary school. And then that information is used to determine the learning plan or the pathway or customized learning for the children. So we have been doing these things. It has been happening. If you talk to your grade 1 teachers right across your constituency, you will hear them talk about it. But we have not shared it publicly, so there's a notion that we are not doing enough. But since 2010, we looked at our budget, we spent about $2 billion at the early childhood. Currently, we are spending almost $5.3 billion in the early childhood sector to make sure that the proper stimulation is happening. So we are making some strides there. That's about 4 to 5% of our budget on education that we are spending in early childhood. And it does not limit itself to those that are in our infant schools. It also extends to those that are in the private institutions, the basic schools that sometimes are said to be not supported by our government. We do have public-private partnership with these institutions. The practitioners benefit from the subsidy. It may not be all that they want, but we do that. In addition to that, for the certification of these teachers and the programs, we, the government, provide for the renewal of their food handler's permit and the police record, which is a part of the requirement for certification. We have a budgetary line item for that. The practitioners apply, get their food handler's permit, and we reimburse them for that investment as part of our support to the institution. So we have been making some strides. There's still much more to be done, right? Because we have to make sure that the programs are working properly. And of course, our PS is reminding me that we are going to scale up the Brain Builders initiative. So we currently have 116 on the books now. We have another 16 that is in the transition for approval. And I think, PS, you had indicated that another 30 should come on very soon. So we're going to be building that out. And what that means, more children will get the proper stimulation, what they deserve. When we compare that to those parents, Chairman, who can provide early childhood care for their children, there are other families who cannot provide that. And this is what the government is now doing. There is a daycare facility fully funded that you can take your children, and adequate staffing will be there. We staff those institutions at 1 to 5. For every 5 infants, there's an adult, and we staff that and pay the salaries for those persons.
Dr. Troop, still not at a place where I appreciate what we can do with the summer months. And I'll tell you why. I'm not an educator or a psychologist, so I'm not sure if we pushed our children for another 6 weeks out of the 8 weeks that they're playing for the summer, if it would be harmful to them or if it would be an opportunity for them to catch up, especially those who need that remedial intervention. So I'm back at that question. I notice you sidestepped it. and is it a problem that is a matter of cost? Because if it's a matter of cost, I'm sure it ultimately comes out in the wash with the amounts that we have to spend later on with CAP and with these occupational studies, and ultimately the pathway program, which now requires that our students spend an extra 2 years at secondary school. So I want to understand that element of it. What can we do in our summer years with persons who are falling behind in the education system? And that's question 1. Question 2. Nothing is wrong in us having a comprehensive approach of how we're going to tackle from all ends, early childhood, primary, high school, beautiful. What Jamaicans will want to know is, at what stage will we start seeing the results? Because these investments don't show results overnight. Yes. It is important that we invest in our children, in their education. But it would be wonderful if we could say, look, coming out of high school, our average pass is now 40%. However, give us 5 years, 6 years, and this is where you will see Jamaica going in terms of the caliber of students that come out of the educational system. Yes. Member Clark has a question, so write them down, number 1, 2, and Member Clark is coming with another.
Madam Chair, I just want to add to what you're saying, and it is my opinion again, Mrs. Dwyer and Dr. Troop, that summer school cannot be a harm to any child. When I was going to all-age school, you have to do summer school whether you like it or not. And that is when you catch up on some things that you just couldn't understand during the regular school years. So I'm still saying, and I still maintain, that once the assessment is done, summer school can be for those students who are advanced, yes. But it must be for students who are lagging behind, because they too, they're not going to stay in grade 7. They're moving on to grade 8, but they're moving on to grade 8 with a level of education that still is not at grade 7. And so we must give them the extra time. We must mandate it. Parents must know, say, you are working, you're partnershiping with the government to make our children better marketable when they get to that stage.
Yes.
I am saying also that it is my opinion that if all that you have said to us in that mouthful, all that you have said to us is really happening, at what stage are we doing the assessment to know that some of the kids aren't making it? Because at the end of high school, that is when we realize that the youngster can't even put the letters together to spell his own name. But yet, he would have gone through early childhood institution, he would have gone through primary, and he would have gone through the secondary. And so we now have to create programs like the CAP, yes, and everything else to give them that chance, to get a chance to learn a trade and to try and spell a name. We are at a point that we need to implement assessment and to make sure that when the assessment reports are done, that we implement what needs to be implemented, because the only person who is going to suffer is first the individual and second the country. And we are legislators, you are the technocrats. We have to partner to make sure that the generation that is to come is not just a generation of laborers, but a generation of technical persons who will advance this country to where it ought to be. We need to pay attention, and I will keep on using that term, pay attention to what needs to be done. You're doing a fantastic job, but we still need to do more. We have to bend back way, we have to push forward, however, because I am in charge of a constituency, which is a lot more informal than some. And so I have it to deal with every God Almighty day.
Yes.
When you talk about, or when you mention Canterbury, when you mention Gullymouth, Hart Street, Barracks Road, the inner city, if we don't capture them, then we are going to find out that soon and very soon we have to fight them. It is easier to capture them now, let them be a part of what we are a part of,
yes,
than to have to fight them in the end, because it is not pretty. And this is where we have to do it.
So, Chair, let me just reiterate that the summer school, I didn't really sidestep it, but I was kind of avoiding it in a sense because we had some blunders administratively, which has colored the program negatively, you know, and so we have to go back to the drawing board. But I can tell you that the ministry is committed to extending learning opportunities. And as we indicated earlier, the research is showing that that's where to go, providing additional learning opportunities for our students. So last summer we tried the program, but as I said, but we are going to make it better. And the intention is to do that next summer as well. In fact, our budget reflects an allocation for summer school, fully funded summer school, again, to extend the learning opportunities for our boys and girls. So we do believe that there's an opportunity there. And as you know, summer school is not new to the educational landscape. It is something that has been happening over the years. Last summer was the first attempt of the government to operate a fully funded summer school. We had some learning opportunities, and we're going to use that to make it better going forward. But the value of that opportunity is something that we want to capitalize on, and so we are going to do that again as part of the learning opportunities to be extended. Currently, we have launched, Chairman, our extra lesson program as well, which is another opportunity to give an additional 4 hours of teaching to the students who need it most. And of course, we engage with some educational partners that will provide online learning opportunities for those who have devices. So we are catering for all the students, again, because the research is telling us that extended learning opportunities, that's the way to go to maximize and to address the gaps that we observe in our system. We have included in our system a series of assessment, as you have indicated. So just to go through, I indicated earlier that we have the H4 assessment, and the interventions are guided by that. Then they move to grade 1 when they do the grade 1 individual learning profile, which again guides the learning plan for the students at that level. Then they do the grade 3 diagnostic assessment that again allows us to treat with the deficiencies that we observe. And all the primary level programs, that's guided by what we call the proficiency pathway policy. So these initiatives are really embedded in the proficiency pathway, where we really do interventions. We do pullouts. We put special education teachers in the primary schools. We create special education units within a regular primary school to treat with some of the deficiencies. And then those students spend 2 years in that program in the regular primary schools, and then they reintegrate at the grade 4 level as part of the intervention. And of course, they go up, the PEP 4, PEP 5, PEP 6. So that's the number of assessments that we have at the primary level that should guide how we treat with what is happening with our children. But we do need to do more for the intervention. Sometimes the focus is on getting them ready for the test. And so we lose focus of the fulsome curriculum and the fulsome development of our students. So those are some of the things we have to work on. We also have to work on retooling our teachers to focus on the customized approach to teaching and learning. And that is something we are working at. This year, what we did was to invest in resources for the teachers, to free them up from the administrative duties. So we now provide lesson plans, teaching aids, televised lessons, archived lessons. So a teacher just need to access those resources, and now we'll have more time to treat with the child, because we want you to teach the child, not just a curriculum. So we are freeing up the teachers from some of the administrative responsibilities. We will be putting in some electronic software to treat with like attendance matters and so forth. So those things that take up a lot of the teachers' time, we'll be removing those from the teachers as part of focusing and addressing the issues with the children as we see them in the assessment instruments that we are working with.
There's a question from Dave Brown.
May I just round off what Dr. Troop said,
and
Chairman?
round off with when can we look forward to seeing improved results?
Well, that's a tough one. I'm putting on my inspector's hat now to say this, that Dr. Troop explained very well that we have a system of national assessments, but the children won't do better simply because we're testing them. And our research has shown that between grades 4 and 6, there's a slump in students' performance. Yes. And so the quality of teaching, we're going to have to look at that more closely. Giving our teachers more support with the online setting, they're back into face-to-face, but the quality of teaching will have to be looked at. We have to look at the quality of parenting, because learning takes place not just in the classroom, but all around. And the children need to have those support structures to help them. We have to look at the quality of the physical infrastructure at schools and how that inures to good teaching and learning. And of course, you all alluded to it earlier, Chairman and Member Clark, the time on task. They have to spend more time. Teaching and learning is practice, practice, practice. And the research shows that those who have the resources to spend more time doing more math, doing more English, going to extra lessons and so on, that those students are doing better in the system. So those are 4 things that I want to identify as areas that we need to focus on in the system now to get the improvements. When? 3 to 5 years. A cycle is usually 3 to 5 years in education.
I actually remember the Brain Builders program. I think it was Minister Ruel Reid who had introduced that initiative. I would love to be able to appreciate how significant that intervention has impacted the quality of learning and our ability to, push our students further. It seemed to have been very impactful. And I think K13 too, I remember, yes. Dave Brown, you had your hand up. You have a question? He is online.
Right. Thanks much, Madam Chairman. I must forget the question because of the length of wait. But Dr. Troop, to you, my question relates to literacy that came up earlier. How does the ministry account for those students who would have, for whatever reason, did not sit the grade 4 literacy test? And for example, would have started out with about 50 students in grade 1, and then come grade 4, only 20 students are thereabouts are taking the examination.
Member Brown, not hearing you very clearly.
One minute.
Go one more time, Member Brown.
Member Brown? Right, Chairman, Madam Chairman, sorry. Let me read the question again. My question relates to literacy that came up earlier, and I said, Dr. Troop, how does the ministry account for those students who, for whatever reasons, did not sit the grade 4 literacy test?
His question is, hold on, Member Brown, hold on, because we have to listen to you very clearly. So his first question is, how does the ministry account for those students who did not sit the grade 4, is that assessment test?
Great, that's correct. That's
the first question. Next question, Member Brown?
No, I was just using an example. For example, 50 students would have started out at grade 1, and at grade 4, only 20 students are taking the examination.
No, repeat that.
I was using an example.
Repeat the student what at grade 1?
No, we would have had 50 students started out at grade 1.
Oh.
Comes grade 4, only 20 students are sitting the examination.
Okay.
It's just an example, Madam Chair.
Yes, get you clearly. He's doing an assessment. He's saying, for example, he would see 50 students, just for instance, doing assessment and exams at grade 1. And by the time they get to the level of being in grade 4, he's only seeing, say, 20 or 30 students. So are we looking at those who are falling out of the system as they progress through the grades?
Thank you, Member Brown, for that question. Our data is not really showing any high dropout from our primary division. We have up to 98, 99% of our students at the primary level. In fact, Jamaica is one of the best attachment at our primary level. Perhaps at the transitioning phase, we may have some challenges, and at the grade 11 exiting stage, we may have some challenges. But at the primary level, we do boast high attachment at that level. However, we may have some students who did not or could not sit the grade 4 assessment at the time. What we do, how the PEP assessments are set up, is for our grade 5 and grade 6 performance task.
Member Brown, turn off your mic, please.
Right. So the grades 5 and 6 assessment, embedded in those assessments, we have questions that are designed to determine numeracy and literacy levels. So even if they missed it at grade 4, we should be able to pick up at grades 5 and 6 what is happening with literacy and numeracy for those students based on how the exams are designed. So we should be able to report at grade 6 for a grade 4 child who missed the grade 4 literacy or numeracy tests, what is happening with them based on how our exams are designed. So it's not a gap per se. We do promote that all our students should sit the grade 4, because at the grade 4 level, that assessment, there is an entire tool that is focused on numeracy and literacy that we administer at that time to ensure that we are looking specifically at that, and then we track it. However, embedded in grades 5 and 6 are questions to determine the movement in numeracy and literacy.
Okay. Just in terms of appreciating the sixth form pathway program for the wider Jamaica, they would love to be able to appreciate what we're doing. I will give you the opportunity to speak on disturbed, hindered, include us having an appreciation of how many students I think approximately 50% of our students would normally go from grade 10, 11, 12, going up to university. And 50% would normally have not gone on to any further tertiary education of any sort. So I'm seeing where approximately 14,000 students of 38,000 coming out of high school would be advancing. And another question we had asked, I'm not so happy with the response. You reminded us that about $2 billion would be spent on persons going through this additional 2 years of education. Some of that additional, that $2 billion is not quite additional because it would subsume what I saw as about $400 million spent on the cost program, and I'm sure the CAP program would have had a cost to it as well. But we weren't very definitive in terms of what is the net cost. If you don't know the net cost at this stage, you could tell us, but already I'm seeing where we would have saved at least a quarter of that $2 billion from subsuming other programs. So leaving you to just speak, Dr. Troop, and then Mrs. Dwyer, if there's anything else to round up from there, that's our final question to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to speak from my heart with respect to this, because I do see the Sixth Form Pathways program as a thrust of equity, not just Jamaica aligning itself to international standards, because that's what we have done. That's the way of what is happening in the international space with flexible pathways. We also have a commitment under the Vision 2030 Action Plan, National Development Plan. We also have a commitment under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to move in this direction. But for me personally, this is a thrust at equity. We have students in our country, and I can speak from my family. My son knew he was going to have a 7-year of high school program. That was clear. And so there are students from 1968 in this country that had the opportunity of 7 years of high school up to now, and they were able to benefit from the resources of the government to see themselves through to university. This program has now created or enabled those students, those marginalized youth who were denied of this opportunity because we failed to pivot the system over time to respond to these students. This is what this pathway program has done. And for me, it is worthy, it is very critical, because there are other students who saw this as a normal pathway. 7 years of high school is not new. It has been happening from 1968, and persons have maximized on that. What we have done is to level the playing field, enable those students who have been denied over time. And I'm just using this opportunity to call on our parents to see the value of this investment. Education is that weapon that is going to break the cycle of poverty. Education is that vehicle that will lead to the economic and social transformation that you desire for your families. It gives students an opportunity for increased certification, which will see them moving towards home ownership, changing their own lives, their families in the future. And I want persons to see the value of that. There are things to fix, yes, and we commit to getting it right.
COVID over the last 2 years, we would have had some students right at the dropout stage, 16 years old, 17 years old, 18 years old. Will we be able to recapture those students?
I'm happy you went there, Chairman, because if never before, now is why we needed to launch this program. Because the students since 2020, their level of education has been compromised. The time on task that our PA spoke about was limited because of COVID. And so now more than any time ever, we needed to extend the learning opportunities in a formally structured way for our students to get back what they have lost due to COVID. So now we have to work thrice as hard, because we have to find those students and re-engage them. The beauty of this opportunity now is that we get a chance to maximize on the tertiary spaces. We have over 20,000 unused spaces in our tertiary institutions. And so we don't necessarily need to build, we need to access, we need to capitalize. And so those students who have lost this opportunity imposed by the pandemic, this is a chance to get registered, get yourself attached to a tertiary institution. If you do not want to go back into your high school environment, there is an opportunity to get fully funded support to improve your life's chances.
Thank you so much, Dr. Troop. Ms. Dwyer, is there anything you would like to contribute in our wrap-up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Dr. Troop, your passion. Yes. Okay, so I believe the public may want to ask, what's the difference now with between cost and cap and the sixth form pathway program? We're mainstreaming. We're using the existing infrastructure to implement this program. So it's not going to be so expensive. It's not going to be so difficult to find our children. They're going to just move through the system. And I think that is one of the beauty about it. We're giving them structure. We're giving them choice. And we're going to monitor. So we're putting in a different kind of governance framework. You can hold us to account to monitor the results through our NEI, through the monitoring and evaluation unit of the ministry. And of course, the CCCJ is going to be joining forces with us in terms of giving the quality assurance, but also to make sure the certification is in place. So hold us to account for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
In another capacity with a different hat, I have been mulling over how, with the use of technology, we can have some of our adults who fell out of the system and who are not comfortable about going to the equivalent of what is a Jamal school physically, how we can formulate a program using all of what you are already doing, master teachers online at the Ministry of Education, getting our adults and children who would want to be able to benefit from just going back for revisions and stuff, all in a place that online they can log on, and we can get persons who are illiterate and who are not numerate to be able to privately, quietly go through a program of remedial learning from grade 0 all the way to the end of high school. So you're going to find me coming to speak to you because, as you said, the ministry is doing so much and sometimes people do not know. I would like to lend my voice and whatever resources I can put together to find a way to get not just our children educated, but all the adults who are out there who do not want to be seen going to a Jamal class in this day and age, but who would love to now be able at 60 and 50 and 70 years old to read and be numerate.
Yes. Chair, I can tell you that when you're ready, we will be ready because the research has started. Yes. Yes. We have been looking on online pathways to education. We see that in the international space, and a team is already in the ministry looking on that to see how we can add that to the suite of support that we are providing.
Thank you very, very much for that. Thank you very much to the Ministry of Education. And I think we have Hart here as well, huh? No. Just Ministry of Education, just everybody.
We brought the entire team, Chairman.
Yes, the entire team.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It has been a wonderful session, and it's very informative and seeks to educate the public. I know it is challenging, it is hard work. However, the future of our country is ultimately hinged and dependent on the quality of our people, and education is what makes the difference in terms of their own contribution, in terms of their affinity for deviant behavior and crime. And so the future of Jamaica is rested in the hands of the Ministry of Education. Thank you very much. Member Clark, would you be so kind as to move to conclude the meeting? And may I have a show of hand from either Carencia Morrison or Dave Brown online to second?
So move, Madam Secretary, Madam Chairman.
Would you turn your mic on, Member Morrison or Member Brown? And Member Lee is also online. Could someone second?
Seconded, Madam Chair. Seconded.
Seconded by Member Lee. Thanks. This meeting now stands adjourned.
Come ring the alarm. The dust has finally settled. The day of reckoning has arrived. Only two sounds have been left standing. Rough Cut and Kush International. All scores will be settled this Saturday night, February 26, 10 p.m. in the final showdown of Echoes of Sound Systems. It's a dancehall thing. Who will be the Reggae Month 2022 champion sound? Will it be Rough Cut?
Rough Cut!